Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Sarutobi is currently sitting at his deck sorting through today's mission requests when his thought drift back to the report that Jiraiya gave him 6 months ago. He was relieved to discover that Anko was just meeting up with Tsunade when she would leave the village, but what really surprised him was the fact that his old student had apparently adopted a young boy and taken him under her wing. What was really bugging Sarutobi was that even Anko seemed attached to the boy. According to the report, she even got him a birthday present. That's when it finally hit him that this boy's birthday fell around the same time as Naruto's, and the description of the boy was similar to what Naruto might look like if he lived to that age. Could this boy be Naruto? It makes sense, but how did he survive? From the amount of blood in that alley, there's no way he survived, and yet this boy's description is very similar. Though Jiraiya did refuse to tell me anything about him, beyond the fact that he has blue eyes and blonde hair. Coming out of his thoughts, Sarutobi just sighed and decided to drop the matter. There was proof that it was him anyway. And if it was really Naruto, then he was happy that the boy finally found people how care about him, and if it wasn't, then no need to disrupt his life any further. Clearing his head from this line of thought, Sarutobi went back to reading the mission requests and found a C-ranked bodyguard mission. He thought would be perfect for Kakashi's team even though he was a member short, but he had a solution for that as he went through the available genin until he came across one person whose other team members had clan business and would be unable to do missions for a little while. Sarutobi sat back in his chair with a smile on his face, thinking about how this mission will help her out. On a boat heading to the land of waves, we find Naruto, Tsunade, and Shizune on the deck of the boat looking out at the fog-covered water. While Naruto looks over the edge of the boat, Tsunade turns to Shizune and says, "Remind me again, why are we on this boat heading to the land of waves?" Shizune lowered her head and let out a sigh. "Don't you remember, Tsunade-sama? Because Naruto-kun paid off that huge debt you racked up in the last village, you said he could choose our next destination. I just wish I knew where he got the money from." Tsunade thought about it for a second before saying, "Oh yeah." She then proceeded to get a big grin on her face before picking up Tun and saying, "Well, no use worrying about it now, we'll just have to enjoy ourselves." As the boat got closer to land, a huge bridge that was under construction came into view. Naruto just looked up at the imposing structure in wonder and said, "Wow. I couldn't agree more, Kit. That structure is indeed impressive." Naruto just shook his head as he heard Kyuubi's voice. Even after 4 years, he was still not used to hearing her voice in his head. "I still can't believe that the seal was designed to let you have a connection to the outside world through my senses, and even allowed us to communicate like this, Ba-chan." Kyuubi shook her head before she let out a small laugh. "You would think that after all these years you would at least call me Ne-chan. Anyway, I was just as surprised as you were to find out that the seal allowed this to happen. It makes me wonder if that Yondaime of yours knew I would help train you, because it's defiantly easier this way, don't you think?" "You could be right, but that would mean he knew about your true nature and at least suspected what your reason was for attacking Konoha. Which, by the way, Ba-chan, you still haven't told me yet." Kyuubi remained silent after that, and Naruto understood not to press the matter any further. Tsunade noticed Naruto staring off into space and realized that he must be talking to Kyuubi. She still couldn't believe how close Naruto seems to have gotten with Kyuubi. I mean, after they first met, Naruto just treated her like he would anyone, but over the years Tsunade could tell that Naruto had started to think of her as a real Oba-chan. Tsunade still found it funny that the great Kyuubi was being called old by a young boy. After they boat docked and everyone disembarked, Tsunade decided that they should find an inn first. So we find the trio walking down one of the streets. Naruto couldn't help but notice the suffering and poverty of the city. "Kasen, do you think that all of Wave is like this?" asked Naruto. Tsunade had a sad expression on her face from seeing the poor conditions around her before saying, I don't know Naru-chan, but we'll worry about that after we find a place to stay. Right after Tsunade finished talking, a scream could be heard in the alleyway up ahead. Before Tsunade and Shizune could react to the scream, Naruto was already running into the alleyway to see what was going on. As Naruto entered the alleyway, he saw two men cornering a woman who was holding a bag of groceries. Naruto heard one of the men say, so you tell that old man to stop his construction or we can't guarantee you or that kid of yours safety. After he said that, the man went to put a knife to her throat to emphasize his point when a hand grabbed his wrist. Looking over, the man saw a young boy with blonde hair. It's no very nice to threaten someone how can't defend themselves, you know, said Naruto as he tightened his grip on the man's wrist, causing him to drop the blade. The man backed away from Naruto, glaring at him while he rubbed his wrist. Look, you little shit, don't go getting yourself involved in stuff that is over your head. The second man pulled out his own knife before adding, besides, if you play with fire and you're going to get burned, so just walk away. Naruto just looked at the two of them with a bored expression before saying, look, if you don't leave this lady alone, I'm going to have to stop you. And let me give you a little warning, I'm a lot stronger than I look, okay? As he walks over to a piece of rubble that is in the alleyway and uses his fist to completely destroy it. Both men just gap at this before saying, WW, whatever you say, kid. And quickly running out of the alley, passing by Tsunade and Shizune as they make it to the entrance. After seeing those two men run past them, Tsunade and Shizune looked down the alley to see Naruto checking on a young woman who was just attacked. Are you okay, miss? Asked Naruto as he helped her pick up her groceries that had fallen out during the encounter. The woman moved her hair out of her face as she looked up at the boy who had helped her and said, I'm alright, by the way, thank you for saving me from those two men. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along. That's alright, you don't need to thank me, I just can't stand to see people suffer, that's all. Oh, my name Naruto and these two people are Tsunade Kasen and Shizune Nichan, said Naruto as he pointed to the two ladies coming into the alley. Oh, where are my manners? My name is Tsunami and I just want to thank you all for your concern, said Tsunami as she bowed at Tsunade and Shizune. Tsunade walks up to Naruto and starts to rub his head while she says, no need to thank us, we just happened to be passing by as we searched for an inn. Tsunami got a smile on her face after hearing this and said, why don't you stay at my house? It used to be an inn, so there is plenty of room, just think of this as my way of repaying you. Tsunade was never one to pass up anything free, readily agrees to the lodging arrangements, and the group head over to Tsunami's home. Along the way, Naruto had to ask, Tsunami-san, has Wave always been like this? Tsunami got a sad look on her face and said, no, it wasn't always like this. Wave used to be a happy and prosperous place until a man called Gato started to buy up all of the shipping companies. Tsunade's eyes widened at this and said, Gato as in the big shipping tycoon, not to mention he has a whole bunch of illegal gambling halls and who knows what else. You're right, Tsunade-san, but that's not all. Aside from that, he is a big-time underworld figure and will use any means necessary to get what he wants. Tsunade looked over at Tsunami with a sad expression. Sounds like you know this from personal experience. Tsunami just lowered her head before saying, I don't want to talk about it. Understanding what she meant, Tsunade just left it at that, and dropped the subject. When they arrived at Tsunami's home, a small boy ran out to meet his mother. Kasen, what took you so long? Said the boy as he noticed Naruto, Tsunade, and Shizune and got a scowl on his face. And who are these people? Tsunami got a smile on her face and knelt down to face him and said, Don't worry, Inari, these people saved me from some bad men earlier and I offered them a place to stay. Inari just looked at the group and scoffed, What, you guys think you're some kind of heroes or something? Well, I've got news for you, there's no such thing as heroes. And then he just ran back into the house. What the hell was that about? Asked a confused Naruto. Tsunade got a sad expression on her face, but before she could say anything, Tsunade spoke up. Just let it go, Naru-chan, it's none of our business anyway. Naruto remained quiet after that, but he was thinking, just let it go. What the hell does Kasen know that I don't? What do you think, Ba-chan? I think that Tsunade is right, kid. It looks like this is a touchy subject with them. It's best to just let it go for now and let them tell you when they're ready. Alright, I'll drop it for now, but he better not act like that all the time though. Later that evening we find Tsunade cooking everyone dinner while Naruto and Tsunade are sitting at the table playing cards, with Shizune close by drinking some tea, and Inari is closely watching them. As Naruto was looking at his cards, the front door opened. Tsunade looked over to see 5 people come in. One was an older man with a straw hat, a dirty white shirt and pants. This man was carrying a sake bottle as well. Tsunade froze when she saw the rest of the group. One was a girl with long dark with a baggy jacket and black biker pants. The other girl had pink hair wearing a red dress and had black biker shorts. The young boy had black hair and a blue high-collar shirt and gray shorts. Who was carrying the one that really caught her eye was the man that had silver hair that seemed to defy gravity and was wearing a standard Jonin outfit with his left eye covered by his headband. Her only thoughts were, Kakashi, what the hell are you doing here? Kakashi looked around the room when his eye settled on the group of people sitting at the table. When he saw Tsunade, his eye widened. Tsunade-sama, what could you be doing here? Kakashi was not the only one to notice Tsunade's presence. The girl wearing the red dress was wondering the same thing, but her thoughts were broken when she heard Tsunade speak. What the hell are you doing here, Kakashi? Tsunade said in a cold tone. Kakashi was a little surprised by the clawed tone in her voice, just responded in a calm voice, me and my team consisting Sakura. He points to the girl in the red dress, this year's Rookie of the Year Sasuke Uchiha, points to the boy in the blue shirt. Hearing that name caused Tsunade and Shizune to stiffen slightly. Kakashi continues with the introductions, and this is Hinata, points to the dark-haired girl poking her index fingers together. She's our temporary member for this mission. So that's Sasuke, the one that Itachi let live, thought Tsunade as she looked over at Sasuke. After hearing the introductions, Naruto finally looks up from his cards and surveys the newcomers. When he sees the symbol on their headbands, he stiffens slightly and hears Kyuubi growling. So they're from Konoha, huh? I wonder what they're here for. By the looks of the silver-haired guy, the first say they were in a fight a little while ago. What do you think, Ba-chan? Kyuubi just studies Kakashi before answering. You're right, kid, and from the looks of it, it was an intense battle too. That Jonin has used up a lot of chakra. Naruto just nods his head before looking back at his cards while offhandedly saying, you really should get that Kakashi guy to a bed. He looks like he's suffering from a case of chakra exhaustion. Tsunade was surprised by Naruto's reaction. He showed a lot of self-control just now, and his diagnosis of Kakashi was right on the money. A feeling of pride came over Tsunade. Sasuke just grunted and said, hey, like a loser like you would know what he's talking about. I mean, you're not even a shinobi. Tsunade narrows her eyes and glares at Sasuke while thinking, idiot. Shizune just looks at the group and shakes her head. She couldn't believe what she just heard. In her cage, Kyuubi's growl got even louder. Come on, kid, show this bastard he doesn't know what he's talking about. Ignoring Kyuubi's comment, Naruto grips his cards tighter and looks over at Sasuke to see a smug look on his face, then replies, I see Konoha hasn't changed at all. This comment shocked the group from Konoha. How could this kid talk about their home like he's been there before? Kakashi took a closer look at this teen and his eye got even wider when he saw blonde spiky hair, blue eyes and whisker-like marks on his cheeks. It can't be, there's no way he could have survived that much blood loss. While Kakashi was having a hard to believing that the boy in front of him was Naruto, Sakura got really mad at the callous way this boy talked about her home. She yells, "What's that supposed to mean? Yeah, who does this idiot think he is anyway, cha?" Naruto, showing no reaction to hostility shown him, simply focuses on Sakura and says, "It means Konoha is still full of ignorance when it comes to anything other than their own concerns." Sasuke, to this is a direct insult to himself and his clan, retaliates with, "What right do you have to just show up and tell us that we're ignorant? I've never even seen you in Konoha before, so how would you know what life is like there? The fact that you're not even a shinobi means that you're the one who's ignorant." Naruto just shakes his head and lets out a little chuckle before saying, "And you call me ignorant? First off, Konoha is a big place, so it's possible to live in that place and never meet someone. Second, you know nothing about me, so don't go making snap decisions about someone, it will get you killed." Naruto places his cards on the table and stands up. He looks over at Tsunade before saying, "Sorry Kasen, but I don't feel like playing anymore, so it looks like you win this game. If you need me, I'll be on the roof." After Naruto leaves, Shizune look over at Tsunade, who just nods her head. Shizune takes this signal and goes to talk to Naruto. Seeing Shizune leave, Kakashi looks back over at Tsunade, who just took a sip of sake, and said, "That was Naruto Uzumaki, wasn't it?" Tsunade's eyes widen before turning her head back to the sake bottle on the table. Her only thought was, did Jiraiya tell them that Naru-chan was alive? "How do you know?" As Sasuke helped Kakashi over to a bed, his only response was, "His birthmarks, I could never forget those whisker marks." This caused Tsunade to let out a sigh of relief. So it looks like Jiraiya keep his word after all, but now that Kakashi knows, it won't be long before Sarutobi-sensei find out. We find Naruto lying on the roof with his hands behind his head looking up at the evening sky. "You know, kid, I think you were too soft on them. If it was me, I would have made them pay for insulting me like that," said Kyuubi. "It a good thing I'm not you then, Ba-chan. If I had done that, then who knows what Konoha's reaction would be. I mean, not only would they find out that I'm alive, but that I was responsible for putting one of their shinobi in the hospital, they would probably make sure I was dead this time, not to mention the danger that would put Kasen and Shizune Nichan in." Just as Naruto finished that line of thought, Shizune sat down next to him and asked, "Mind if I join you?" Naruto looks over at Shizune and just nods. He doesn't feel like talking right now. After a while, Shizune decides to break the silence. "So Naruto-kun, I'm really proud of how you handled yourself in there, but how do you feel about seeing people from Konoha again?" Naruto just continues to look at the sky and says, "Honestly, I don't know how to feel right now. Part of me hates that place for what it did to me back then. All the beatings and hatred I received was really rough. Then came the murder attempts. It's not something I can just forget, but there's another part of me that's grateful it all happened too." Shizune just looked at Naruto in shock. "What do you mean a part of you is grateful? They put you through hell and you're happy about that?" "I'm not happy about the hell they put me through, but if it wasn't for them, then I don't think I ever would have met you or Kasen. I never would have known what it was like to have a family," said Naruto as he stared off into the night sky. Shizune got a smile on her face. So Naruto-kun isn't happy about what they put him through, but by the fact that he was able to finally get a family. Shizune put her hand on Naruto's shoulder and says, "Come on Naruto-kun, it's starting to get chilly out here, so why don't we go back inside and I'll make you a cup of tea." "That sound good, Shizune Nichan," said Naruto as they both got up and headed back inside. Both of them failed to notice a person sitting behind the chimney with her legs against her chest. Hinata just sat there for a while thinking about what she just heard Naruto and Shizune talk about. So he did live in Konoha for a while, and his life was filled with nothing but pain, loneliness and people always putting him down. He's just like me, but I wasn't strong enough to come through it like he was. Hinata then hugged her legs even tighter, wishing that she was stronger. Gato's hideout. Gato had just finished hearing his two thugs' excuse for failing to intimidate the bridge builder's daughter, and about the young boy who stopped them. You two are completely useless if you're unable to stop a kid from save that builder's daughter. What do you think I'm paying you for anyway? One of the men got on his knees and said, but boss, you've got to understand, this is no normal kid. I mean, he was able to turn a big piece of rubble into nothing but dust with just one punch. This caught the attention of one Zabuza Momochi and his follower Haku. Zabuza wanted to know more about this boy, but he was still injured from his fight with Kakashi, so he was unable to go look into this matter himself. Before he could offer Haku's assistance, Gato spoke. Well then, I'll just have to send someone to see if this kid really is a threat to my plans. Shadow, come out here. A figure came out of the shadows wearing a black cloak and hood that covered their face, and the part of the face that was visible was covered up by a face mask. What is it you want, Gato? Gato just glared at him and said, don't talk to me like I'm some punk. You work for me, don't ever forget that. I want you to go and check on this kid my men were talking about and see if he is a threat to me, understood? Shadow just looked at Gato and said, sure, why not? If this kid is anything like they say, then things could get interesting around here. It has been a few days since Naruto's encounter with Team 7, and Tsunade has decided to let him let off some steam with a little spar with Shizune. So we find Naruto, Tsunade, and Shizune in a clearing deep in the woods around Tsunade's house. Alright, the rules are simple. First, the fight ends when I say so. Second, there is to be no jinjutsu, or ninjutsu. I don't want a certain shinobi copying any, just you, said Tsunade. Naruto just looked at his cousin with a questioning look. Cousin, when you say copying any jutsu, do you mean the Sharingan you told me about? Tsunade inwardly cursed herself for saying that out loud. She didn't want Naruto to find out what the Sharingan looked like just yet. Tsunade lets out a sigh and answers, well, yes, Naru-chan, as you know, it has the ability to analyze any just you that they see, and copy it perfectly. Naruto gets a scowl on his face and says, that still sounds like cheating to me. If you learn it that way, then you might not be able to fully understand its strengths, or its weaknesses, and by the way, you still haven't told me what it looks like, cousin. Tsunade started to laugh. Naruto already understood the Sharingan's weakness. If one doesn't take the time to fully understand the just you, then you will never use it to its full potential. That's right, Naru-chan, gaining a just you that way is kind of like cheating, because you're not doing any of the work required to fully understand the technique. Now let's get this spar started. Naruto was frustrated that his cousin didn't answer him, so he just nodded and got into his fighting stance, while Shizune got ready as well. Tsunade looked at both of them and then shouted, begin. Naruto decided to start off by throwing some shuriken at Shizune. While she was dodging them, Naruto went around behind her and tried to kick her in the head. Shizune ducked at the last second and went for a sweep, which Naruto jumped over. Sorry, Nei-chan, but you're not going to get me that easily, said Naruto as he came in with a heel drop. Shizune got out of the way just in time to see a big crater form when Naruto's heel made contact with the ground. Shizune just looked at the crater and thought, if Naruto-kun is going to use his strength, then I'll have to take this seriously, as she readies herself for his next attack. In another part of the forest, Kakashi had Team 7 working on their chakra control by practicing tree walking when all of a sudden the ground shook. Looking around, he spotted dust above the tree line just north of his position. Deciding that they should go investigate, Kakashi called his team over and they headed off in that direction. When they reached the clearing, Kakashi was surprised to find Tsunade watching a fight between Naruto and Shizune. Kakashi was shocked to see Naruto clinging to trees as he dodged some of Shizune's attacks. Naruto's clinging to the trees like it's second nature to him. Kakashi looks over at a smiling Tsunade and wonders, just how much have you taught him, Tsunade-sama? Sasuke was really pissed off as he watched Naruto's spar. His pride was having a hard time believing that this loser was better than him, even if he was trained by Tsunade of the Sannin. As Sasuke continued to watch the fight, he couldn't help but think, where did that loser get this power? I'm an Uchiha, one of the elite clans of Konoha. If anyone deserves to have that kind of power, it should be me, not some loser who isn't even a shinobi. The only thoughts going through the mind of Sakura while she watched the spar were, this kid is good, but Sasuke-kun was still better. As Hinata watched the spar, she just stood there staring in awe. She couldn't believe how strong Naruto was. Hinata watched as Shizune was able to kick Naruto in the stomach, sending him flying through a tree and hit the ground. Shizune landed 5 feet from where Naruto hit the ground. She was a little worried that maybe she hit him too hard. She didn't mean to send him flying through the tree and into the ground. As the debris from the tree landed on the ground, Naruto got to his feet and wiped the blood from his lip. Naruto looked at Shizune and smiled before saying, "Not bad, Nichan, you managed to bust my lip there." Shizune just shook her head in disbelief. "Even if I ask you to surrender, you won't, will you, Naruto-kun?" Naruto's smile got bigger as he said, you got that right, Nichan. I never give up, it's one of the reasons I've lived so long." When Hinata heard those words, her eyes widened as a new sense of purpose filled her, as she decided to try and live up to those words, and never give up. Team 7 was not the only ones who came to see what all the ruckus was about. Haku had been gather herbs when she heard the sound of battle, so she decided to go investigate and see if it was a threat to Zabuza. As Haku remained hidden, she observed the spar between a blonde-haired boy and an older woman. Both appeared to be quite skilled when it came to taijutsu. That's when her eyes caught the sight of the Konoha shinobi that she rescued Zabuza from a couple of days' age. So the Konoha shinobi are here. So does this mean that the boy and the woman are their allies? If so, then we could be in serious trouble. Haku decided the best way to find out was to continue her observations. As the spar continued, Kakashi felt he had recovered enough to see if Naruto was using any chakra in his attacks, so he lifted up his headband to reveal his Sharingan and focused on Naruto. As Naruto jumped back to evade one of Shizune's kicks, he suddenly had a feeling of dread, as flashes of the beating he got years ago passed in front of his eyes. His eyes widened and started to look around for the source. Shizune took advantage of Naruto's distraction and landed a blow to his face, sending him crashing into a tree. When Tsunade saw Naruto's eyes start looking around, she got a little worried. He never let himself get distracted like this when in a spar. So she scanned the area herself. She froze when she laid eyes on Kakashi with his Sharingan active, looking at Naruto. Tsunade looked back to where Naruto hit the tree, only to see him standing on a branch looking around frantically. Her eyes widened in realization, oh shit. He's able to sense the chakra being used in the Sharingan. Tsunade immediately rushed over to Kakashi and yanked his headband down, covering his eye. Giving Kakashi a hard glare, her focus went back to Naruto. Seeing that he had a very confused look on his face, decided to call it a day. Alright. That's enough for now, yelled Tsunade. As Naruto landed on the ground next to the tree, Sasuke came up to him, grabbed Naruto by the coat and said, I demand that you tell where you got that power from. Looking at Sasuke like he was nuts, Naruto just said, through training. This really infuriated Sasuke. His grip tightened as he said, Don't toy with me, you loser. There's no way a person like you could become that skilled with just through regular training. Now tell me where you got it. Naruto narrowed his eyes. What an. Sasuke Tem, I'll give you just 5 seconds to let go of me, or I'm going to take this as an assault on my person, and break your arm in response. Before anything could happen, Kakashi separated the two and led his team off to finish their training. After they left, Naruto continues to stare in the direction that Team 7 headed. Shaking his head and letting out, Naruto said, "You know, Kasen, I'm starting to wonder if your bad luck is rubbing off on me." A little irritated by this comment, Tsunade remains calm and asks, "What do you mean by that, Naru-chan?" "Well, it was my choice to visit Wave in the first place, and it's done nothing but bring trouble, and bad memories." Tsunade and Shizune looked at Naruto with a sad face. That's when Tsunade decided to ask, "Naru-chan, what happened in the spar earlier? Why did you get distracted at the end?" Naruto thought about it for a second before responding with, "I don't really know, I was just overcome with a feeling of dread, it was like someone was watching me. The only time I felt like that, was just before you found me, Kasen. That's what I thought." Tsunade put a smile on her face and said, "Well, let's worry about it later, okay? Let's just head back and get me some sake." Naruto just laughed at his Kasen's attempt to change the subject. He just looked up at the sky, and let out another sigh before saying, "I think I'll just go for a walk, I just need to be alone for a little while." Nodding, Tsunade said, "Alright, just don't stay out too late, okay, Naru-chan." "Thanks, Kasen," said Naruto as he started to head off into the woods. During this time, Haku watched the exchange between Naruto and Sasuke. She was a little relieved to see that the Konoha shinobi and this other group weren't allies. Haku decided that she wanted to know more about the blonde-haired boy and his relationship with that dark-haired boy. Bringing her focus back on the group, Haku see Naruto walk off into the woods while the other to head back to town. Since she can't learn anything more here, Haku decides to head back to the clearing and continue to gather the herbs for Zabuza, and disappears in a whirl of leaves. When the wooded area is deserted of all its occupants, Shadow came out of the shadows. Shadow had observed Naruto's spar and was impressed with his taijutsu skills, but the name, Naruto, bothered him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had heard that name somewhere before. After looking the battlefield, Shadow thought, "I'm going to have to report this to my partners, maybe they know where I heard the name Naruto before. I'll also have to tell them that it looks like Tsunade-sama is here with him." Shadow then returns to the shadows. As Naruto walked through the woods, he stumbles into a clearing. As he looked around, he spotted a girl wearing a pink kimono gathering herbs. Seeing that she was by herself, Naruto headed over to see if she needed any help. Haku was surprised when she sensed Naruto come into the clearing. She couldn't believe that she ran into Naruto so soon, and when he started to head towards her, she decided not to let this opportunity pass by. With her back to Naruto, Haku lifted her head and said, "It's not very polite to sneak up on people like that. I'm sorry, I was just wandering around, and I ended up here." I didn't mean to sneak up on anyone. What the hell? Since when do I stutter? For that matter, how was she able to tell I was even walking up to her? Could she be a shinobi? When Haku turned around, she couldn't help but laugh at Naruto's confused expression. "If you didn't mean to, then I guess it's alright. By the way, my name's Haku, may I ask yours?" Naruto just rubbed the back of his head as he tried to figure out Haku. Shrugging his shoulders, he answered, "Mine's Naruto, it's nice to meet you." As they shake hands, Naruto notices the herbs in Haku's basket and asks, "I see you're collecting some medical herbs, would you like some help?" "You know about medical herbs?" said a shocked Haku. "Yeah, My cousin and Nichan are medical specialists and have been training me so I can follow in their footsteps, said a smiling Naruto. Over the next few hours, Naruto got to know Haku while he helped her gather medical herbs. When they had finished, he looked over at her and noticed the look in her eyes. This caused him to ask, "Can I ask you a question?" When Haku nods, Naruto continues, "Have you ever experienced a painful and lonely moment in your life?" Haku's eyes widened. "How?" was all that escaped her lips. Naruto just gave Haku a slight smile and said, "It's your eyes, I see that same look every time I look into a mirror." Haku sat there in shock. Naruto just closed his eyes and lets out a sigh. He then lifts his head skyward and opening his eyes he says, "It's the look of a person who survived a traumatic encounter, and knows what true pain and suffering is." Haku just looks at Naruto for a second and then asks, "How would you know about that? You don't look like you've had to deal with any kind of suffering before." Naruto's head lowered so that his hair covered his eyes. "My life wasn't always like this. Before I met my cousin, I lived in a village that hated me. One night about 9 years ago, that hatred boiled over, and they tried to kill me. Nearly succeeded too. They left me for dead somewhere along a roadside. That's where Kasen and Shizune Nichan found me. After they healed me, they took me in and raised me. Just when I was about ready to give up too, they gave me what I needed most, a family, and a place where I belonged, and I've never been happier." Haku just stared at him in disbelief. She couldn't believe that the boy was just like her. But unlike her, he never lost his purpose for living, for he never had one until he met his cousin. Haku had a far-off look and said, "A place to belong, I once had a place like that. I belong to my parents." Haku then focused on Naruto and continued, "They were both kind and caring, and for a time, I was happy, but then something happened." Naruto knew what she would say next, so he said, "You don't have to continue, I don't want you to bring up painful memories." Haku gave him a small smile. "I'm alright, I don't know why, but it just feels right telling you this. Maybe it's because we share similar pasts. Anyway, my happiness came to a sudden stop. When my father found out that my mother had a Kekkei Genkai, he went into a rage, and killed my mother, then he tried to kill me. Before I even realized what was happening, my Kekkei Genkai awakened, and I ended up killing my own father." Naruto watches Haku just stared at her hands after she said that. Trying to cheer her up, Naruto says, "Just remember, that's in the past, and from the look of this basket, you were able to find someone that cares about you." Haku just looked over at Naruto, and smiled, "Thank you, Naruto-kun." "You're welcome, Haku-chan," said Naruto. Looking up at the sky, Naruto realized that he needed to head back before his cousin started to worry. Saying their goodbyes, Naruto and Haku parted ways, but not before agreeing to get together later. Unknown location deep in the woods. As Shadow walked into the agreed-upon meeting location, he spotted two figures waiting for him. One was a female, in her mid-20s, with emerald green eyes and silver hair in a low ponytail, with long bangs coming down on either side of face. She was wearing a white sleeveless robe, with a red vest over top, black Anbu-style pants with silver shin guards, and standard shinobi shoes. The other one was a man, in his late 20s with brown wild hair, a dark blue bandana, there was a scar across his right eye, with a dark face mask. The rest of his clothing was standard shinobi equipment. "Yo, Akira. Ba-yu, you're here early," said Shadow in a friendly manner. Ba-yu just looked up and said, "Keep it down, Shadow, we don't know if anyone could be listening. Now give us a mission report." "Well, Ba-yu, it's proceeding slowly. I've been unable to talk to Zabuza about joining our village, and Gato's been keeping a close eye on him since his lose to Kakashi." Ba-yu got a serious look on his face and said, So, Konoha sent Sharingan Kakashi to protect the bridge builder. What about the rest of the mission? Well, I've been able to get close to Gato and I'm about ready to take him out, but a little complication has appeared, said Shadow. Raising an eyebrow at this, Yu says, a little complication. Yesterday, Gato had me track down a boy who saved the bridge builder's daughter. When I finally found him, he was with two others, one looked a lot like Tsunade-sama. I didn't recognize the other one, but she called the boy Naruto. Shadow looks over at Yu and said, I know, I've heard that name somewhere before, but I can't place it. Akira stiffened when she heard the name and asked, Shadow, what does this boy look like? Well, he has blonde spiky hair, deep blue eyes, and he had these odd whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks. Akira's eyes widen when she hears this. It can't be, that sounds like Naruto Uzumaki. That's impossible. He died over 9 years ago, yelled Shadow. That's true, but remember, this information came from Konoha, so we might have been lied to, said Yu. If that's true, then what are we going to do about it? Said Akira as she nods her head in agreement. Yu comes to a decision. Shadow, you will continue with the mission, however, I want you to find out if he really is Naruto Uzumaki. Yes, sir, said Shadow as he fades into the shadows. Akira, we may have to run interference. If what Shadow said is true, then Tsunade-sama has to be close to the boy, and I don't think she'll want anyone to find out the truth about him. Akira nods her head and heads off toward town. Yu just stood there for a moment before he followed after Akira. His only thought was, if he really is Naruto Uzumaki, then Sensei is going to be really pissed that we were lied to. Living room of the Tazuna house. As Naruto walked into the living room, he saw Tsunade sitting on the couch waiting for him. You've been gone a long time, I was starting to get worried, said Tsunade. Naruto just sighed. He hated to upset his cousin like this. I'm sorry, cousin, I was helping a friend gather some herbs, and I just lost track of the time. Tsunade perked up after hearing this. So, my little Naru-chan was able to make a friend here, huh? What's their name? What kind of person are they? Naruto just shook his head at all the questions. Well, to start, her name is Haku, and she's just like me. We both know what it's like to be truly alone. She does seem to be a very kind person, and her knowledge of medicine rivals my own. Tsunade just smiled at Naruto. She was happy that he was finally able to make a friend. She was a little worried that after his experiences in Konoha, he would try to distance himself from people his own age, so he wouldn't get hurt again. Tsunade put her arm around Naruto and said, I'm happy that you were able to make a friend, Naru-chan. It's starting to look like it was a good idea to come to Wave after all. Now come on, it's late, let's turn in for the night. Over the next few days, Naruto spent his time training with his family, avoiding Sasuke and spending some time with Haku. Naruto even found out that, as he suspected, Haku has had some shinobi training. They even taught each other some ninjutsu. Haku taught Naruto Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu, and Suiden, Daibikufu no Jutsu. While Naruto taught Haku Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, and some healing techniques since she had some medical training. Naruto's time in Wave seemed to be going better, that is until one evening when everyone was together for dinner. As the meal progresses, Inari, who had been watching Naruto for the past couple of days, finally broke down and yelled, Why do you train so hard? No matter how hard you train, there will always be someone who is stronger than you. Naruto just looked over at Inari and said, Shut up, I'm not like you, I'll never just give up and become a baby like you. Inari just shouted back, You don't know a thing about me. You're always spending time with your family, or that friend of yours. You have no idea what suffering and loneliness is really like, or what my life is like. The room got deathly quiet as Tsunade and Shizune glared at Inari. Finally, the silence was broken by Naruto. Naruto had his head lowered with his hair covering his eyes as he said in a harsh tone, "You say you've suffered, kid, you don't know the meaning of the word." The tone in Naruto's voice caused a visible flinch from Tsunade and Shizune. This didn't go unnoticed by the Konoha shinobi, but before anyone could say anything, Naruto continued. "You don't know how lucky you had it. You've always had your mother and grandfather, who love you, and will always be there for you. I didn't even know what love was, until I was 4, or what it felt like to belong to a family until I was 5. This shocked everyone in the room except for Tsunade, Shizune, and Kakashi. Since the room was silent, Naruto continued, "You want to know the funny thing is? If it wasn't for the hatred of Konoha, then I probably wouldn't have met my family." This statement caused Kakashi to lower his head, and Hinata had tears in her eyes. Sasuke just sat there looking completely uninterested. As for Sakura, she didn't believe what Naruto just said, yells back, "You're lying, Konoha isn't like that, we treat everyone like family." Naruto just scoffed at Sakura's words and says, "Depends when you were born." Naruto then looks over at Tsunade and says, "Sorry Kasen, but I've lost my appetite, so I'm going for a walk." Tsunade nods her head, and Naruto walks out the door. After Naruto leaves, everyone recovers from their shock and then Inari runs out of the room crying. Shizune looked over at Tsunade, who gives her a slight nod. Understanding the meaning, Shizune gets up and follows Inari. When Sakura reiterates her last statement about Konoha treating everyone like family, a low chuckle could be heard from Tsunade. Shaking her head, Tsunade says, "Family, Konoha was like that once, but that was a long time ago." As Tsunade got up and headed for the door, Sakura came out of her shock and says, "How can you say that, Tsunade-sama? You should know firsthand how Konoha treats everyone." Tsunade stops dead in her tracks, and looks back at Sakura before saying, "You're right, I have seen firsthand the results of what the people of Konoha are capable of." Tsunade then proceeds out the door. When Shizune found Inari, he was sitting on a dock crying over the harsh treatment he received from Naruto. As Shizune sat down next to Inari, she says, "You know, Naruto-kun really didn't mean to blow up at you like that." Inari looked up at Shizune with tear-covered eyes, while Shizune just let out a sigh, "But, I think he's been holding that inside himself for so long, that your words just set him off. You see, for the first part of his life, Naruto-kun was all alone, he didn't even have a mother or a father." Inari stops crying and goes wide-eyes as Shizune continues, "In fact what he said was true. When he was 5, some shinobi tried to kill him. If it wasn't for Tsunade-sama and myself, he probably would have died." Inari remained silent after hearing that about Naruto. Seeing this, Shizune just smiled and added, "So don't let it get to you. Naruto-kun can't stand to see people suffer, so in his own way, he was trying to help you. So, let's head back inside, shall we?" Inari looked up at Shizune and tried to smile before they headed back inside. We find Naruto walking through woods mentally berating himself for yelling at Inari like that. "Smooth Naruto, real smooth, you probably scarred the poor kid for life." Naruto then punches a nearby tree to vent some frustration, leaving a huge indentation in the tree. "Will you keep it down, Kit? Some of us are trying to sleep here," yawned Kyuubi. "Not now, Ba-chan, I'm pissed off enough as it is." "What's got you so mad, Naruto-kun?" said a voice from behind him. Turning around, Naruto looked up into the tree only to find Haku looking down at him. Kyuubi looked at this new girl and inwardly smirked. "Not bad, Kit, she'll make a fine mate someday." This caused Naruto to nearly choke. Baa-chan. It's not like that, we're just friends. Seeing Naruto get a far-off look on his face, Haku started to get worried. Jumping down to the ground she asked, "Are you okay, Naruto-kun?" Shaking his head and ignoring Kyuubi's laughter, he looked at Haku and sighed, "Not really, I kind of blow my top at a little kid, when he said I didn't know what suffering was like." Before Haku could say anything, Sasuke came out of the woods and walked up to them with a scowl on his face. "I knew this was a waste of time, I can't believe that I followed a loser like you out here, thinking that I could see what kind of training you do, and here I find you meeting some worthless little girl, pathetic." And then he just grunted and walked away. Sasuke received glares to the back of his head, from both Naturo and Haku. Both of them had the exact same thought, "Man, he's a real." After Sasuke was out of sight, Naruto looked over at Haku and said, "Sorry about that, Haku-chan, he can be a real sometimes. It wasn't your fault, Naruto-kun, so stop blaming yourself," said Haku. "Thanks, Haku-chan, but what are you doing out here at this time of night?" "I was just about to meet up with someone, when I heard a loud noise and I thought I would investigate." Naruto got a thoughtful look on his face before saying, "Well then, I wouldn't want you to get in any kind of trouble for being late. So I'll just be on my way." As Haku watched Naruto walk off, she said, "Naruto-kun, do you think we could meet up tomorrow night, just so you can talk to someone about what happened with that kid you yelled at?" Naruto just smiled at Haku and said, "Sure thing, I'll meet you here around this time tomorrow, okay?" Haku just nodded and headed up to meet Zabuza at their hideout. When she got back to the hideout, Haku ran into Zabuza right inside the door. "Haku, where did you run off to?" Haku just bowed and said, "Sorry, Zabuza-sama, I ran into my new friend and got delayed." Zabuza just looked at Haku for a second before saying, "Never forget how you are, Haku. Now go get ready, we'll attack the old man tomorrow." "Hi, Zabuza-sama," said Haku as she went to get ready for tomorrow's mission. When the following morning came, Tsunade decided that because of what happened last night, Naruto deserved to sleep in today. So she headed out to see if she could find a place to think about how to tell Naruto about the people who assaulted him, as well as sell her some sake. As she was about to leave, Shizune decided to come along with her, so they told Tsunami to let Naruto know where they were headed and left the house. Team 7 had just escorted Tazuna to the bridge when a thick mist started to roll in. Before any of them realized it, they were surrounded by Mizu buncheons of Zabuza. "I see you've still got those brats with you, Kakashi. It seems the boy is still trembling from our last encounter," said all of the Zabuzas. Sasuke just gets smirk on his and says, "I'm trembling with excitement." Sasuke just blurred out for a few seconds, and then all of the Zabuzas burst into water. "For I've been waiting for a rematch." "Well, it looks like this brat has turned into rival, Haku," says Zabuza. Knowing that this would piss off Sasuke, Haku says, "Not really. No, if it were Naruto-kun, then I would have to agree with you." Everyone was caught off guard with this comment. Kakashi just looks over at the two, they know about Naruto. Recovering from his shock, Sasuke starts to see red and charges Haku. Sasuke throws a series of punches and kicks aimed at Haku's head, chest, and kidneys. After Haku blocks all these blows, she goes for a sweep to the legs. As Sasuke starts to fall, Haku comes around with a kick to the chest, sending Sasuke flying backwards. Sasuke comes skidding to a halt in front of Kakashi. His smirk never left his face even as he got back to his feet. Wiping some dirt from his chin, Sasuke says, "I'm glad to see that you have some skill. I was afraid that this was going to be boring." Haku just shakes her head in disbelief. Can he really be that arrogant? He couldn't even touch me with his attack, and I kicked him halfway across this bridge, and he thinks I have some skill. Haku lowers her head and says, I'm going to enjoy taking you down a peg or two. Tsunade's house. After Naruto received Tsunade's message from Tsunami, he decided to take a bath and get ready for when she came back. Just as he finished getting ready, he heard screaming coming from downstairs. By the time he got downstairs, he hears Tsunami say, if you kill Inari, I'll bit off my tongue, and bleed to death. Then you won't have any hostages. Naruto snuck up to the doorframe and took a peek inside. What he saw surprised him. It was the two men that threatened Tsunami over a week ago. One of them was dragging Tsunami away while the other one was putting a sword to Inari's neck. After assessing the situation, Naruto did some hand seals and vanished into thin air. As the two men continued to threaten Inari, they never noticed the Jinjutsu Naruto put them under. Both men's eyes widened as they dropped whatever was in their hands, and grabbed their heads and dropped to their knees screaming, before falling unconscious. Inari just looked at the two men and then at Naruto, who just appeared out of nowhere, before asking, what just happened? Naruto rubs the back of his head and gets a smile on his face as he replies, well Inari, I used a Jinjutsu on them, that I developed myself. Before you ask, this Jinjutsu dives into your mind, and finds the most brutal act that you have committed in the last year. It then has you live through that even, but you're the victim, so you experience all the pain that you inflicted on them. Seeing the confused look on Inari's face, Naruto decided to try another approach. Basically, what I said was that I make them relive one of their acts of brutality as the victim. They see themselves hurting themselves. Naruto kneeled down to face Inari. He got a sad look on his face and says, Inari, I saw what they did to your father, and I promise you this. I won't let Gato, or his men, kill your grandfather. After seeing a smile appear on Inari's face, Naruto tied up the two men and headed off toward the bridge. At a pub somewhere in town, Tsunade took another swig of her sake, then look over at Shizune and says, Shizune, I think it's time we talk to Naru-chan about the clan that assaulted him. With the only two Sharingan wielders from Konoha here, he's bound to find out about the Uchiha clan's involvement, and I want to make sure that the Uchiha brat doesn't push Naru-chan over the edge. But Tsunade-sama, Shizune never got to finish her sentence as both of them felt Naruto's chakra spike. Tsunade's head snapped, and looked over at Shizune. Something's wrong, we need to head back to the house, now. Shizune just nods her head and both of them head out the door. Just as they exit the pub, a strange man lands in front of them. As Ba-yu looks over at the two, he simply says, I'm sorry Tsunade-sama, but I can't let you interfere. Tsunade was a bit surprised that this man knew who she was, let alone the fact that he was able to sneak up on them like this, means he has some skill. Tsunade looks over at Shizune. Making eye contact, she gives Shizune a nod. Understanding what Tsunade was implying, Shizune returns the nod, and then dashes off towards Tsunade's house. Ba-yu moves to intercept Shizune, when Tsunade suddenly appears in front of him to block his path. Narrowing her eyes at him, she asks, what exactly are we interfering with? Ba-yu just stares back at her and says, tell me, that boy who accompanies you, is his full name Naruto Uzumaki? Back at the bridge, Sasuke was just barely able to dodge Haku's Sensatsu Susho. When he looked back toward Haku, he was starting to get really pissed off at the face that this shinobi was playing with him. Damn it! This Haku is just toying with me. If I just had my Sharingan, this would be child's play. Haku just smiled behind her mask at the amount of trouble Sasuke was having just trying to keep up with her. Ever since her encounter with him the night before, Haku has developed a strong dislike for the Uchiha Kakashi was starting to get a little worried. Sasuke wasn't faring too well against this Haku person, but if he were to go help then Zabuza would move in to kill Tsunade, along with his other two students Sakura and Hinata. He just narrowed his eyes at Zabuza and continued to wait for his moment to strike. He just hoped it would happen before anything bad happened to Sasuke. Sasuke throws some kunai and shuriken at Haku. While she moved to dodge, he charged in. Just as Haku dodged the projectile weapons, Sasuke managed to kick her in the face to send her flying back. Haku does a flip in midair and lands on her feet. Haku looks up only to see Sasuke charging at her again, so she decided that playtime was over, and starts doing hand seals and then says, "Demonic ice mirrors." I could not find the Japanese name for this, just you. I would appreciate any help in finding a site that has the Justu's names. Thanks in advance. Sasuke comes skidding to a halt, as he sees a large ice mirror form in front of him. Taking a quick glance around him, he sees that he is completely surrounded by these mirrors. Turning back around to face Haku, Sasuke is surprised to see Haku walk into one of the ice mirrors, and after her image appears on all of them, Sasuke couldn't help but think, "Grr, how could I let this happen? I'm an Uchiha, one of the elite clans of Konoha, I shouldn't be having this much trouble." Sasuke's thoughts were cut short as Senbon needles came flying towards him. Kakashi watched on in horror as the Senbons headed towards Sasuke at alarming speed. This is bad. Without Sharingan, Sasuke's no match for this shinobi. I've got to do something. Just as he finished this line of thoughts, Zabuza appears in front of Kakashi. "Don't forget that I'm your opponent," says Zabuza as he swings his sword in a downward slash. Somewhere in town, Shizune was about halfway to Tsunade's house when a hail of kunai came flying at her. Distracted by her concern for what was happening to Naruto, she barely manages to dodge the attack. Landing on a nearby rooftop, Shizune scans the area, looking for her attacker. When she suddenly hears the sound of clapping coming from behind her, turning around she sees a woman standing on the adjacent roof. Akira is still applauding Shizune's skills, when she says, "That was quite impressive, I didn't think you could dodge that attack, being as distracted as you were, Shizune-san." Shizune gets into a defensive stance and asks, "Who are you?" Akira just shook her head and takes a bow. Where are my manners? My name is Akira, it's nice to finally meet you, Shizune-san. Now, if you would be so kind, as to stay right here, until all of this is over, that way I won't have to fight you." Shizune was really confused now. She didn't understand why this woman was trying to stop her from reaching her Otudo. "What do you want with Naruto-chan?" Looking into Shizune's eyes, Akira says, "We want to know, if the Naruto that is with you, is the same Naruto Uzumaki that is from Konoha, who was supposedly killed nearly 10 years ago, or in fact one in the same." Shizune's eyes widen slightly at hearing this. She starts to get a little worried, and responds with, "I doubt they are, but why would it matter anyway? What's so special about him? He would have been a small child back then." Lowering her head so that her bands cover her eyes, Akira says, "A long time ago, the Konoha Council not only lied to our sensei about him, but they also throw her out of the village. Why they did that, I don't know, but 10 years ago, she found out that he was still alive. She wanted to go herself, but my team managed to talk her out of it." Akira tilted her head back to look at the sky, then she continues her story. "So, my team went in her place. By the time we reached Konoha, it was already too late." A tear trickled down her cheek. "Can you believe it? He was just a child, and they really tried to kill him. Well, after we finished our investigation, we reported back to our sensei. Needless to say, she wasn't too happy. I swear, if we would have had the strength back then, we probably would have declared war on Konoha. Now Shizune was in a state of shock after hearing all this, but she couldn't help but wonder, if what she says is true, then why are they attacking us? If you're telling me the truth, then answer this. Why did you attack us? Why not just come to us and talk in a civilized manner? Letting out a sigh, Akira answers, that was the team leader's choice, he said you wouldn't give us a straight answer. So, I ask again, please just stay here, and wait until this is over. I can't do that, Naruto-kun might be in danger, and I won't let him face it alone. Shizune says as she gets ready to attack. Akira just looks at Shizune and says, you really care about him, don't you? Giving a slight smile, Shizune says, I do, he's like a brother to me, so I won't let you harm him. Closing her eyes, Akira stands there in silent contemplation. When she opens them again, she looks directly at Shizune and says, then, I guess we have no choice, I can't let you interfere until we learn the truth. I'm really sorry about this. As the two face off against each other, Shizune lifts up her right sleeve to reveal her Senbon launcher. Pulling back the strings, she launches them at Akira, who quickly dodges them and comes in with a series of punches and kicks that Shizune blocks and counters by throwing a roundhouse kick to Akira's head. Akira catches the kick and throws Shizune into a wall. Akira then comes in to deliver a punch to the Shizune's face, when Shizune manages to duck and roll out of the way. When she looks back, Shizune sees Akira's fist make contact with the wall, which quickly turns to rubble. Narrowing her eyes at Akira, Shizune thinks, this is bad. She's just as strong as Tsunade-sama. I'll have to be careful, one wrong move, and it's all over. Just outside the pub, Yu was still waiting for an answer. Well, Tsunade-sama, are you going to answer the question or not? Tsunade just shrugs her shoulders and says, I don't know what you're talking about, from what I've heard, this Uzumaki person died quite some time ago. Shaking his head, Yu just says, first, the council lies to us, then, all of Konoha, and now, I've got a feeling, you're lying to us too. As much as I don't want to do this, it looks like I'll have to beat the truth out of you. Getting a smirk on her face, Tsunade says, if you want, you can try, but I've got a feeling that you'll regret it. Suppressing a chuckle, Yu comments with, well then, I guess after this is over, I'll be paying Naruto-kun a visit, I'm sure he'll be more than willing to talk. Tsunade clenches her fist as her killing intent goes through the roof. Glaring at Yu, Tsunade says, I swear, if you hurt Naruto in any way. Before Yu could even blink, Tsunade appeared right in front of him, landing a chakra-enforced punch to his jaw, which sent him flying back and smashing into the building that was behind him. Tsunade just glared at the hole she sent him through and finishes her sentence, I will kill you. In the forest close to the bridge, Naruto was running through the forest when he felt a massive amount of killing intent coming from the town. Remembering his training from Kyuubi, Naruto starts to focus his senses to see if he can tell who it's coming from. When he is finally able to tell who it was coming from, he came skidding to a halt, looking in the direction of the killing intent. He couldn't help but think, Kasen. What the hell is going on? Why does it feel like Kasen is in fight? Focusing his senses further, he feels a sudden spike of chakra coming from Shizune. Looking in that direction, Naruto's eyes widen in shock. Shizune Nichan too. I need to find out what's going on, but how? I could use Kage Bushins, but if it is a fight, one good hit and they'd be gone. What do I do? After hearing Naruto's mental rant, Kyuubi decided to help him out. Looks like you could use so help kit. Kyuubi Obachan, you know a way, I can create a Bushin that lasts for more than one hit. Kyuubi just smiles and says, it's just a theory, but if you use my chakra, With your cage bushins they should be able to put up quite a fight before dispersing. If this works like you say, then I think I'll call it Kyuubi Kage Bushin no Justu. Naruto forms a cross-shaped seal and creates two of his new clones. Their appearance is almost identical to Naruto himself except for the face. Their whisker-shaped birthmarks were darker and more pronounced, and the eyes were still blue with pupils changing into slits. Looking at his two clones, Naruto gave them some mental commands to find Tsunade and Shizune. Both clones nodded and headed out to complete their tasks, and Naruto took off toward the bridge. Back at the bridge, Kakashi was surrounded by mist as he mental berates himself for his situation. Damn it, this mist is to think for me to see anything with my Sharingan. I spent all my time focusing on getting my team ready, that I forgot to train myself. It's been too long since I had a fight like this. Heh, what's the matter Kakashi, can't see. Too bad you weren't trained in silent killing says Zabuza. Closing his eyes, Kakashi tries to focus on Zabuza's next move. Got to calm down, focus my senses, and locate his next target. Kakashi then opened his eyes in realization, shit. He's going after Tazuna. Kakashi was just barely able to get there in time to block Zabuza's attack. As Zabuza put more pressure on his sword he says, "Not bad Kakashi, you barely managed to block that attack. Let's see how you do when I increase the mist." As the mist increased, Zabuza seemed to just disappear into the mist. Kakashi gets into a defensive stance and starts to look around. Well, it looks like this fight just went to the next level. Inside the ice dome, Sasuke wasn't faring so well. His body was covered in scraps and scratches, as he was just able to dodge the next barrage of sendens that came his way. Damn, I'm not getting anywhere. If I could just follow her movements, then she would be no match for me, thinks Sasuke as he subconsciously starts to gather chakra to his eyes. When Haku launches her next attack, Sasuke starts to see Haku's movements and is able to dodge this barrage of Senbon. After Haku finished her attack, she looked over at Sasuke to see what his condition was. Her eyes widened when she sees Sasuke still standing with his Sharingan blazing, 1 comma in his left eye and 2 commas in his right. So, he's finally awakened it. Well, it looks like it's time to end this. Haku launches another barrage at Sasuke. While Sasuke starts to dodge, Haku was able to use this distraction to use her chakra for a quick burst of speed. Appearing behind Sasuke, Haku uses 2 of her Senbons to strike the pressure points in his neck to send him into a death-like state. As Sasuke starts to lose consciousness, he hears Haku say, "You're not going to die, that's too good for you. Instead, I want you to live with shame of being beaten by a loser," and then the darkness claimed him. After Sasuke falls limply to the ground, Haku cancels her "just you" and heads toward Tazuna, Sakura, and Hinata. As Sakura sees Haku walk out of the mist, she takes a step back, out of fear. If this person managed to defeat Sasuke-kun, then I don't stand a chance against them. Hinata's already shaky confidence completely disappeared when she sees Sakura start to back away, but before she could even react, a strange wind started to blow. As the wind started to clear the mist from the bridge, it revealed Kakashi using a kunai to block Zabuza's sword. Both of them looked around at the clearing mist in wonder. What the hell is Kakashi doing this? Zabuza thinks as he jumps away from Kakashi. When Kakashi felt the wind, he couldn't help but wonder, who's behind this wind? They were able to dispel the mist with such ease. While everyone was wondering the same thing about the wind, but for Hinata, however, this wind had strange warmth to it, almost as if it was telling her that everything was going to be alright. Haku was also having a similar feeling, when a voice came out of nowhere saying, "Suiten, Suiryuden no Jutsu." As the giant dragon made of water came crashing its way towards Haku, she just raised her hand and started to channel her chakra. Just as the dragon was about to make contact, it suddenly split in two and went over the both sides of the bridge and back into the water below. Landing in front of Sakura and Hinata, Naruto looked on in disbelief at what the masked shinobi was able to do, for he knew only one person who could do that. It can't be. Flashback 2 days ago. Haku just smiled at Naruto and said, "Ready, Naruto-kun. I'm ready, but won't you get hurt if this makes a direct hit?" says a concerned Naruto. Shaking her head, Haku says, "You're forgetting about my Kekkei Genkai. Remember, I told you that I can control any form of water." Naruto reluctantly agrees and launches a water dragon, and watches as Haku raises her hand and splits it in two, completely missing her. Looking back over at Naruto, Haku just smiles and says, "You see, I told you I'd be fine." End flashback. Haku-chan was the only word that escaped his lips. Haku takes off her mask, a sad expression clearly on her face, as she says, "Naruto-kun." Naruto lowered his head while saying, "So, you were the ones Gato hired to take out the old man." Haku's only response was to nod. Lifting his head, you could see the feeling of betrayal in his eyes as his pain-filled voice says, "Just tell me one thing, was our friendship a farce? Did you just use me so you could get information on the Konoha shinobi?" Inside her cage, Kyuubi couldn't help but get a sad look on her face from what Naruto just said. She couldn't help but feel that she was the one responsible for Naruto's lack of trust. I hope you just wait to see what her answer is, before you do anything, you're going to regret later, Kit. Out in the real world, Haku visibly flinched at what Naruto said. It pained her to see the look of betrayal in his eyes and the sound of his pain-filled voice. The last thing she ever wanted to do was to be the cause of even more pain and suffering for Naruto. Looking directly into Naruto's eyes, she says, "I won't lie to you, Naruto-kun, before we met, that was one of my intentions. As well as to try and get you and your family as our allies, but after we met, everything changed." Haku lowered her head and continued, "After that day in the woods, I didn't care about getting information on them," points to Kakashi and the rest of Team 7. "I just wanted to get to know you better, so, please believe me when I tell you, our friendship wasn't a farce. Please, I don't want to lose my only friend, because of this." When Haku raises her head, Naruto searches her eyes for any sign that she's lying. Just as Naruto was about to make his decision, Kyuubi makes her opinion known. "I think you should trust her, Kit. I don't sense any deception coming from her. Besides, it looks like she really cares about you." "You're right, Ba-chan, I was getting the same feeling from her." Naruto started to smile, but then a sad realization set in. Looking over at Haku, he says, "I believe you, Haku-chan, you didn't use me, but I can't let you kill the old man, because I promised Inari I'd protect his grandpa." Haku's sad expression returned as she looked over at Naruto and says, "And I can't go against Zabuza-sama, so, I guess this means we're enemies now." As Naruto lowers his head, he says, "I guess so." He then lifts his head and smiles, "But you know what, I'll always consider you my best friend, Haku-chan." Haku returns the smile while saying, "Likewise, Naruto-kun, I too will always consider you my best friend." As both Naruto and Haku get into their fighting stances, Naruto couldn't help but think of all the fun he's had since he met Haku. Looking over at Haku, Naruto makes a silent promise. "I swear to you, Haku-chan, we're both going to make it through this alive." That's a promise. Everything was eerily calm as Naruto and Haku faced off. Even Kakashi and Zabuza stopped fighting when they saw Naruto use Suiryuden no Jutsu on Haku, and now everyone was watching the battle between friends. As Naruto looked into the eyes of Haku, he couldn't help but wonder, were we destined to become enemies, Haku-chan? Is there no other way? Ba-chan, do you think we'll be able to find a way out of this, without someone dying? I don't know, Kit, but you need to stay focused, or you won't last too long in this fight, said Kyuubi as she sat down to concentrate on watching this upcoming battle. Naruto's and Haku's heads lower slightly just before they charge each other. Haku unleashes a flurry of punches and kick to which Naruto dodges and then counters with his own series of punches to the head and torso, only to have Haku block them all. Both were impressed with the level of skill that they were seeing. That's when Haku decided to take it up a notch. Increasing her speed, she launches a punch to Naruto's face. At the last second, Naruto dodges, by ducking and moving to the right and then countering with a sweep to the legs. Haku flips backwards to avoid the sweep. Getting back into her stance, Haku couldn't help but give a sad smile when she saw Naruto getting ready to charge again. Both of them charged each other again, and launched a high kick at each other, causing their shins to collide. As the fight continued, Kakashi looked on in shock. He knew that Naruto had some skill, from the spar he saw earlier, but he never imagined that he could be this good. Naruto, with the level of skill you're showing now, you could easily make Chunin, possibly even Jonin. Kakashi wasn't the only one impressed with Naruto's abilities. Zabuza had been watching from the beginning as well, and couldn't help but think back to Haku's words about Naruto. You're right, Haku, this Naruto kid is a worthy rival after all. Zabuza continued to look on with a little bit of pride at the skill Haku was showing, until he saw the look in her eyes. They had a pained look, like her soul was being ripped out and shredded into little pieces. After seeing that pained look on Haku's face, Zabuza started to feel regret for the first time in his life. He started to think that maybe forcing Haku into this fight wasn't such a good idea after all. In the streets outside the pub, Ba-yu emerges from the hole that Tsunade punched him through. Rubbing his jaw, he couldn't help but think, damn, that hurt. I'm glad she only gave me a warning. If she'd punched me at full force, I'd be taking a dirt nap right now. Damn, Tsunade-sama, when you want to get your point across, you make sure the meaning is abundantly clear, don't you? Tsunade just looked at him for a second before saying, what's the deal? First you threatened my son, and now you're making joke, while still treating my name with respect. It can't be both, so which is it? Are you an ally or an enemy? Until I ascertain your true motives, it's both really. I believe that this is the best way, for getting to the truth, said Ba-yu as he just crossed his arms over his chest. Tsunade just looked at him like he was crazy. You've got to be kidding me. You believe that strong-arming people with threats is the best way to get what you want. Shrugging his shoulders, Ba-yu just nods his head and says, why not, it seems to work for Konoha. Shaking her head, Tsunade says, I see you still have a lot to learn. This will be the final test. Ba-yu thinks as he says, you're one to talk. For all I know, you're still working for Konoha, and just like them, you're waiting for your chance to kill him. Tsunade was really pissed off now, slamming her fist into the wall behind her, causing the wall to splinter and crack. With an intense glare, she looked at Ba-yu and says, don't you dare compare me with those people. Ba-yu got a small smile behind his mask after seeing Tsunade's reaction, and as she charges him, he thinks, so, I was wrong about her, she really does care about him. With Shizune letting out a deep breath, Akira thinks, man, that took a lot out of me. Standing upright, she turned to judge Shizune's reaction to her attack. Damn, I was hoping to intimidate her into staying here and not interfering, but it looks like I just increased her resolve. Akira just shook her head at this development. Ba-yu, I'm going to kick your later, for making me do it this way. I hate this strong arm approach of yours. It would have been so much easier if we had talked to them, and then discerned their true motives that way. Why do you have to be so paranoid anyway? Flashback just after their meeting. As Yu catches up to Akira, he gives her orders. Akira, while Shadow tries to find out about Naruto from watching him, I want you to use whatever means necessary to keep Shizune from Naruto, while I interrogate Tsunade-sama. This shocked Akira and she voiced her opinion. What? You can't be serious. We don't even know if he is an Uzumaki, and you're already planning to make an enemy out of the people that have raised him. What's the matter with you? Yu just gives her a harsh glare before saying, listen here Akira. Sensei put me in command of this mission. So, my orders we'll be following, not yours, and besides, how do we know that they aren't still working for Konoha? They could be just biding their time, waiting for orders to kill him. Akira just gives him the, "Are you crazy?" look before saying, "Are you mad?" Tsunade-sama and Shizune-san have raised and protected him, so, how can you say that they are just waiting for orders to kill him? Getting irritated at Akira's constant questioning of his orders, Yu says, that's enough. My orders stand, and you will follow them to the letter, got that? Akira lowers her head in defeat and said, yes sir. Seeing the anger in Akira's eyes, Yu says, if you're worried about Naruto's safety, don't forget that Shadow is watching him. So, he should be just fine. End flashback. I'll ask you again, please just stay here and don't interfere. I don't want to fight someone who's taken such good care of Naruto, said Akira as she got into her fighting stance. Shizune looks at Akira for a second before coming to a decision. Giving Akira a harsh glare, she says, I don't know if you're telling the truth or not, but I won't be intimidated into abandoning Naruto-kun. He's already had a long list of people who have, and I don't intend to add it. This comment was enough to cause Akira to avert her eyes from Shizune's glare. This one action was all Shizune needed as she launched her attack. Akira was taken by surprise when Shizune attacked, so Shizune was able to land a hit on Akira, sending her flying back. When Akira recovered from the hit, Shizune was already on her, launching even more punches and kicks to Akira's body. While Akira was blocking, dodging and throwing out her own counter-attacks, a bunch of kunai came flying at her the moment she had separated from Shizune. After doing a series of back flips to avoid the oncoming kunai, she looked up to see a figure attacking her with a heel drop. Akira gets out of the way just in time to see a small crater form when the heel made contact with the ground. When the figure stood up, Akira got a good look at his face and her only thoughts were, no question about it now, he looks just like his father. As the Naruto clone turned to check on Shizune, he says, you okay Shizune-nichan? When Shizune gets a good look at the clone's face, she starts to panic a little. Naruto-kun, what on earth happened to you? Giving Shizune a slight smile, the clone says, don't worry Shizune-nichan, the boss will explain everything later, but right now, the clone turned his head and glared at Akira. I'm going to help you take out the trash. Boss. So, this is Bushin. Were the thoughts of Shizune as she went and stood next the clone, and got ready to attack. Coming to the same conclusion as Shizune in regards to the clone, Akira come to a decision, screw Yu's orders. Clone or not, I will not fight Naruto-sama. And she does a hand seal and disappears in a puff of smoke. With his enhanced hearing, the clone heard what she said. Completely confused by this statement, he vocalizes his confusion, Naruto-sama. Shizune's eyes widen as her head snaps in the clone's direction, Naruto-sama. She looks over to where Akira had been. What's going on here? Akira, just who are you? Shizune's thoughts were stopped there as the clone turned toward her and said, we need to go Nichan, it looks like the boss is fighting his only friend on the bridge. How do you Shizune starts to ask when she is interrupted. We share a mental link. Everything I know, the boss knows and vice versa, said the clone as he looked off toward the bridge. Shaking her head in amazement before saying, then there's no time to waste, we need to get there as fast as possible. The clone just nods and they both take off toward the bridge. Back at the bridge, while Naruto and Haku are still going at it, Sakura was scanning the bridge looking for any sign of Sasuke. When she finally sees him lying in the ground, she turns toward Hinata and said, Hinata, I'm going to go check on Sasuke. So, I'm counting on you to guard Tsunade, okay? For her part, Hinata just lowered her head and started to poke her index fingers together. Are you sure that it will be alright? I mean, Kakashi sensei told both of yous to guard Tsunade. Sakura just looked Hinata in the eyes while saying, look Hinata, Kakashi sensei wouldn't want us to abandon our teammates, would he? So, I'll go and check, while you continue to guard Tsunade, that way we can take care of both at the same time. Does it make sense now? I guess so, came Hinata's meek reply. After her conversation with Hinata, Sakura made her way over to where Sasuke. When she finally reaches Sasuke, she stood there for a moment, before dropping to her knees. This isn't a genjutsu, is it? He's so cold, said Sakura in a saddened voice. Sakura then leaned over Sasuke and started to cry like a baby. Through her sobs you could hear her say the name, Sasuke. This wailing caught the attention of everyone on the bridge, it even caused Naruto and Haku to stop in mid-attack. Both of them blinked for a second before turning toward the sound. Naruto looked over at Sasuke and after seeing his condition, he just shook his head. Judging by where the senden are in his neck, he's just in a death-like state. He should be up and about in a few minutes, so why is she crying like that? Well Kit, I'd say she's letting her emotions cloud her judgment, says Kyuubi. Naruto just shrugs his shoulders. If you say so Ba-chan, but I think she needs to spend more time on her training, and less time chasing after that bastard. Naruto then turns to face Haku. Looking Haku in the eyes, Naruto says, I'm a little surprised Haku-chan, you didn't take advantage of me, when I dropped my guard, or when I turned my back to you. Haku broke eye contact and lowered her head before saying, I could never stab you in the back like that, Naruto-kun. This brought a small smile to his face as he said, I'm glad to hear I can trust you with my life, it's a shame that we're enemies. Haku-chan, I don't want to be your enemy, and I've got a feeling that you don't want to be mine either. So please, let's end this battle, there's no reason for you to fight for Gato. You're too kind for that. Haku's head remained lowered with her eyes shrouded in shadow as she says, Naruto-kun, the last thing I wanted to do was fight against you, but Haku raises her head, I'm Zabuza-sama's tool, to be used as he see fit, and Zabuza-sama has ordered me to make sure the bridge builder is taken care of. Naruto was about to ask why, when it suddenly hit him, Zabuza is the one that cares for you, isn't he? Hi, says Haku as she nods her head. Then, I guess we really don't have a choice, says Naruto as he starts to do a series of hand seals while thinking, I hope this works, and then yells out, Kaden, Karyu Enden, Fire Dragon Flame Projectile. While Naruto is doing his hand seals, Haku starts doing her own and yells out, Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu, Water Dragon Projectile Technique. As the two jutsu collide, the fire dragon flame is put out but the water dragon evaporate, leaving the area covered in fog. Using this chance, Naruto tries to sneak around Haku, only to have a couple senbons pierce an area around his left shoulder, effectively numbing the arm. Looking at Haku through the dispersing fog, Naruto says, you knew I was going to try and sneak around you, didn't you? Nodding her head, Haku says, I suspected something when you started doing hand signs for a fire jutsu. Naruto-kun, you should give up, your left arm is numb, and practically useless, you can't beat me in that state. Still holding his left arm, Naruto lowers his head and says, Haku-chan, you should know by now, that I don't quite, back down, or run away. Oh, and Haku-chan. Don't underestimate me. Haku's eyes widen when she sees Naruto turn into a puff of smoke. What the? A cage bushin'. When did he? Haku quickly snaps his head around just in time to see the real Naruto's right fist coming at her. As the fist makes contact with Haku's chin, she was able to stab Naruto in his right arm with the senbons that she was still holding. When they separated, Naruto pulled out the senbons while Haku wiped the blood from her lip. Taking a brief second to look at each other, they both got sad looks on their faces, before they charged each other again and continued the battle. Leaning against a tree that wasn't too far from the bridge, Shadow was watching the battle with great interest, when Akira landed next to him. Shadow turns his head toward Akira and asks, "What are you doing here? I thought you and Bai-Yu were going to keep an eye on Tsunade-sama's activates, in case she would try and interfere with our investigation." Lowering her head and letting out a sigh, Akira says, "There's been a change in the plan. Bai-Yu decided to confront Tsunade-sama directly, and he ordered me to delay Shizune-san, but when a clone of Naruto-sama appeared, I couldn't bring myself to fight him, so I disobeyed orders, and fled." Shadow just looked at Akira in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me, that idiot. What the hell was he thinking? Didn't he realize that this method could turn them against us? What a minute, Naruto-sama. You're that sure of his lineage, are you, Akira?" Nodding her head, Akira answers, "More so now than ever before." Deciding to change the subject a little, Akira turns attention towards the fight between Naruto and Haku before saying, "So, how's he doing?" "Very well actually. I was surprised to see that they seem to be evenly matched. It would seem that Tsunade-sama trained the boy well, he can definitely defend himself." Shadow takes a quick glance towards Sasuke's position. "Well, looks like the Uchiha is coming around, things should get interesting from this point on." As Sasuke began to regain consciousness, the first thing he heard was the sound of Sakura crying over his body. "Get off me, Sakura, you're heavy." Sakura wiped the tears from her eyes as she looked at Sasuke's face. Seeing that his eyes were open, Sakura enveloped him in a bone-crushing hug while screaming, "Sasuke-kun! Sasuke-kun! Sasuke-kun!" Getting slightly irritated by this, Sasuke says, "Sakura, you're hurting me." Sorry," came Sakura's meek response, as she lets go of him, and he starts to get to his feet. When Sasuke got to his feet, he started to look around looking for the shinobi that defeated him. Turning his head to the left, his eyes widened in shock, for there was Naruto fighting on what looked like even terms with the enemy shinobi Haku. Sasuke was having a hard time comprehending how Naruto, who wasn't even a shinobi, was able to go toe-to-toe with a renegade shinobi. As his anger started to rise, Sasuke remembered that he now had his Sharingan. Figuring that he could at least copy some jutsu, Sasuke used some of his remaining chakra to activate his Sharingan, and then focused his attention on the battle. This battle has been going on for quite a while now. Both Naruto and Haku were breathing hard, Haku more so than Naruto, as the fatigue of battle started to show. As they take a moment to catch their breath, Naruto felt a chill run down his spine, as the same feeling of dread washed over him. This time, however, it was like this feeling was coming from a specific direction. Naruto turned around to see what was causing this feeling when he saw Sasuke's eyes, causing him to stop dead in his tracks. Inside her cage, Kyuubi was starting to get a little worried about Naruto's reaction toward the sight before him, for she could feel the anger rising within him, when all of a sudden Kyuubi could feel her chakra being drained. This isn't good, the kid's subconscious is taking my chakra. At this rate, he could go into a blinding rage. Back in the real world, Kyuubi's fears were becoming a reality, as Naruto was starting to be consumed by an uncontrollable rage. As Kyuubi's chakra started to leak out of Naruto, his appearance starts to change, his whisker marks become darker and more pronounced, his eyes change from a deep blue to a blood red, as his pupils turned into cat-like slits, and his canines became longer and sharper, while his fingernails turned into sharp claws. Naruto just stood there for a moment staring at Sasuke's eyes before saying, "You. It was your clan." Before anyone could say anything, Naruto charges towards Sasuke screaming, "It was your clan that nearly killed me, and then just threw me out like yesterday's trash." Back with Tsunade. Baiyu has been on the defensive ever since Tsunade started to attack him. As Baiyu dodges a heel drop from Tsunade, he barely has time to react when he heard a voice say, "Kaden Gukaku no Jutsu, great fireball technique." Looking up, he sees the big fireball coming closer as he performs a kawarimi to escape unharmed. When the clone landed next to Tsunade, she couldn't help but wonder, in Naru-chan, what's happened to you? As the clone gets into a fighting stance, and starts to channel his chakra as he says, "Looks like the boss's suspicions were right." This comment caught both Tsunade and Baiyu by surprise, as they thought, "That's a clone. I've never seen one that was so powerful." But as soon as they finished this train of thought, everyone felt the sudden increase in chakra coming from the bridge. The clone simple looks over at Tsunade before saying, "Kasen, the boss knows who attacked him." As soon as the clone finished his statement, he went up in a puff of smoke. Tsunade just looked on in horror as the words that the clone said sunk in. "Oh God. I should have told him. I should have told him. Now who knows what's going to happen. I've got to get there, and fast." When Baiyu sees Tsunade make a mad dash toward the bridge, he decides not to pursue her. After all, he's already got all the information that he needs anyway. Turning his head to where the clone was and thinks, "So, it looks like Naruto has lost himself to his rage, but I'm impressed that the clone was able to relay that one message before dispersing though. Well, there's no reason to hang around here anymore, might as well head back to the rendezvous point." Back at the bridge, Shizune had just arrived at the bridge when Naruto noticed Sasuke's eyes. When she saw him charge Sasuke, she yelled out, "Naruto-kun, stop. You're better than this. Don't stoop to their level." Haku was very confused about what was going on, until she heard Shizune's plea, then everything clicked. She didn't even care that they were supposed to be enemies, she just knew she had to stop Naruto from doing anything that he might regret later, and runs after him. Back inside her cage, Kyuubi was torn. On one hand, she wanted to see the Uchiha get what was coming to him, and on the other hand, she knew he would regret doing it like this later. Damn it, as much as I want to see that bastard get what's coming to him, I can't let the kid do it this way. Kit, remember what you told me? Flashback 1 week ago. You know, Kit, I think you were too soft on them. If it was me, I would have made them pay for insulting me like that," said Kyuubi. "It a good thing I'm not you then, Ba-chan. If I had done that, then who knows what Konoha's reaction would be. I mean, not only would they find out that I'm alive, but that I was responsible for putting one of their shinobi in the hospital, they would probably make sure I was dead this time, not to mention the danger that would put Kasen and Shizune Nichan in." End flashback. Right after Kyuubi finished getting her point across, Haku caught up to Naruto and enveloped him in a hug while saying, "Not this way, Naruto-kun. Don't let your rage control you, that can only lead to regret." After hearing Haku's heartfelt plea, Naruto starts to calm down and change back to normal. Upon seeing that Naruto has calmed down, Haku releases him from the hug. Naruto then turns around to face Haku, seeing that her eyes were filled with sorrow, caused Naruto to feel guilty for letting his rage consume him. Putting him hand on her shoulder, he only said two words, "I'm sorry." Naruto then pulled Haku into a hug while saying, "And thank you, Haku-chan." Yuta-ba-chan. Sasuke just stood there in shock for a moment before replying with, "You really are a loser. You go and accuse my clan of murder, for which you have no proof, and then you go and let those girls talk you out of picking a fight you know you can't win, pathetic." Naruto releases Haku from the hug and turns to face Sasuke, and with a hint of venom in his voice he says, "You don't know how lucky you are, Sasuke-tem. Those girls, as you call them, probably saved your life." "They saved my life. Don't make me laugh, you couldn't kill me on my worst day," says an irate Sasuke. "Oh really?" says Naruto as he raises his right fist, and using his super strength Naruto throws a punch and stops an inch from Sasuke's face. With the condition that Sasuke was in, just the force of the fist moving through the air was enough to knock Sasuke on his. Tsunade arrives just a few moments later to see Sasuke on his, with Naruto standing right in front of him. When Naruto turned around, he looked directly into Tsunade's eyes. After Naruto walked over to her, he lowered his head and said, "Kasen, I now understand why you didn't tell me." Naruto lifted his head to reveal a sad expression, "I let my rage consume me, and I almost attacked someone who was defenseless, even though he deserves it." Tsunade gave her son a hug while saying, "It's not your fault, Naru-chan. If I had just told you to begin with, you wouldn't have lost it like you did when you saw the Sharingan." After the embrace, Naruto gives his cousin a small smile before he turned to Haku and with a heavy heart said, "I guess we should get back to our fight now, huh, Haku-chan?" Haku just lowers her head and with a pained voice says, "I guess." Before it can go any further, Zabuza comes to a decision and walks up to Haku. Placing his hand on her shoulder, he says, "That's enough, Haku." Haku looked over at Zabuza with a questioning look and said, "Zabuza-sama." Crossing his arms and turning his head so he is looking out over the bridge, Zabuza says, "I'm no longer interested in killing the old man." Haku's eyes widen for a second before a smile comes across her face. She bows and says, "Hi, Zabuza-sama." With Akira and Shadow. Akira gets a smug look on her face as she looks over at Shadow. "Well, do you believe me now?" Shadow simple states, "There's no question now, that boy is Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yuko, and the rightful heir to the Uzumaki clan. You know, once we finish our mission here, we'll be reporting this to Sensei." Akira just nods her head, and then looks skyward. "I wonder how Sensei will react to this. Knowing her, she'll probably be pissed at Bai-Yu for his decision to engage Tsunade-sama the way he did. Then who knows, but you can guarantee that she'll want to go and meet him," points to Naruto. "You're probably right, but how will we find him again? You can pretty much guarantee that Tsunade-sama will want to be on the move as soon as she can. Don't worry about that, it's already taken care of," says Shadow as he looks toward the unfinished portion of the bridge. He watches as a horde of men use ropes to climb up the side and get to the main roadway. Looking closer, Shadow sees one of the mercenaries carrying a short man wearing a business suit. "Well, looks like Gato is making a personal appearance. It seems we'll be wrapping up this mission sooner than expected." Back on the bridge, just when Naruto thought everything was going to be alright, he heard a voice say, "You're pathetic, Zabuza, your little has a hard time, and you're ready to throw in the towel. Hey, and you call yourself Demon of the Hidden Mist? It's more like scared little puppy." Zabuza and Haku narrowed their eyes at Gato, and had their weapons at the ready, as Naruto gave Gato a harsh glare for calling Haku a After assessing the situation, Naruto mentally curses, son of a bitch. Could thing possibly get any worse? Sasuke Tem is in no shape to put up much of a fight. This means he'll have to be guarded along with Tsunade. Haku and I aren't in top fighting condition. Kakashi and Zabuza are probably still a little worn out from their fight earlier. The only ones in top fighting condition are Kasen, Shizune Nichan, that shy girl, and the fan girl. Things are not looking good. Naruto takes a deep breath and tells everyone his plan. Alright, everybody pay attention, I've got an idea about how to survive this. We need to form a defensive perimeter around this side of the bridge or we won't make it. Since Kakashi and Zabuza fought each other, they should have a good idea of their strengths and weaknesses, so I want them to take the left side of the bridge, and since I've fought Haku-chan before, we'll take the center of the bridge, while Kasen and Shizune Nichan will take the right side of the bridge, and try to keep the damage to the bridge to a minimum. Remember, if the bridge is destroyed, then Gato has essentially won, and I can't think of a better way to piss him off than to beat the shit out of all his men, while still protecting the bridge. Tsunade decided to add, Naru-chan, you know I can take all of them by myself, so why not just let me handle it? Naruto let out a deep sigh and said, I know the way you fight Kasen, the bridge would most likely suffer severe damage, or be completely destroyed. That's why I need you to refrain from going all out unless it's absolutely necessary, okay? Tsunade crosses her arms and does a little pout, fine, we'll try it your way, but if things get out of hand I'm going to take matters into my own hands. Shaking his head, Naruto says, fine, we'll use that as our backup plan. Okay, everybody ready? Hey, what about Sasuke-kun and the rest of us? Yelled Sakura. Naruto just looked over at Sakura and says, I thought you would have been able to figure that out for yourself. Since Sasuke Tem is in no condition to fight, I figured you and Hinata would be in charge of protecting both Tsunade and the bastard. Don't call Sasuke-kun that, shrieked Sakura. Naruto just rubs the bridge of his nose before saying, we don't have time for this. Everyone just get into position, we can discuss stuff like this later, after the danger has passed, alright. Gato just stood there and started to laugh. Heh, 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 do you honestly think this little plan of yours will save you? Listen up, I'll give a bonus to whomever is able to bring me the head of Zabuza, or his little, he grabs his bandaged arm, I still have a score to settle with her. The mercenaries let out a cheer as they charge the small group of shinobi. As the battle commences, we find Naruto and Haku fighting back to back as they take out one mercenary after another. After kicking a mercenary in the head, sending him flying away, Naruto looks over his shoulder and asks Haku, hey Haku-chan, do you think that after this is all over, you and Zabuza-san would be interested in traveling with us? Haku's eyes widen when she hears this. It was like a dream come true for her, so she says, I'll have to ask Zabuza-sama first, but I can tell you that I would be interested. A smile forms on Naruto's face as he dodges a sword swing and counters with an uppercut to the jaw. Tsunade and Shizune were incapacitating mercenaries left and right as they continued to stand their ground. While Kakashi and Zabuza were a little more brutal in dispatching the mercenaries. One of mercenaries charged Kakashi with a spear, who simply grabbed a hold of the spear with his left hand. He spun around and nailed the merc with a back fist to the face. After dispatching the merc, Kakashi simply throws the spear away. The spear that Kakashi throw away lands next to Sasuke, who has been going on a mental rant. I'm an Uchiha for crying out loud, I should be out there fighting, not sitting on the sidelines, like some useless civilian. Sasuke then looks over to where Naruto is fighting and his anger started to boil over. It's all his fault, if he wasn't here, then none of this would have happened. Eyeing the spear, Sasuke came up with a plan. I'll make him pay for humiliating me like this. Sasuke picks up the spear and uses the last of his strength to hurl it at Naruto. Busy with dispatching the last of the mercs that were attacking his area, so he failed to notice the spear until it was too late. Before Naruto could react, Haku jumped in front of him, effectively shielding Naruto from the incoming spear. As the spear pierced her flesh, it just barely missed her heart, and when the spear finally exited out of her back, it sent her blood spattering onto Naruto's face. Naruto screams out, "NNNOOOOOOO!" catching the attention of the rest of their group. Tsunade and Shizune stopped dead in their tracks as they heard Naruto's yell. Seeing what happened, Tsunade couldn't help but get a sick feeling in her stomach, while Shizune brought her hands to her mouth, and got a horrified look on her face. Kakashi just got a downcast look on his face, while Zabuza just closed his eyes and slightly turned his head. The surviving mercenaries decided to take this opportunity to retreat and regroup back by Gato. As Haku fell to the ground, Naruto was able to catch her, and after he removed the spear, he gently laid her on the ground. As her head touched the ground, she coughed up some blood. Looking up into Naruto's face, she says, "Hey, are you alright, cough, and Naruto-kun?" Wiping some of the blood off her face, Naruto tries to heal her while he simply says, "I'm fine, Haku-chan, but you need to conserve your strength." Cough, cough, well, it looks like cough, cough, I won't be able to travel with you after all. Naruto-kun. Haku's voice trails off as she loses consciousness. Fearing the worst, Naruto checks her vitals. She's still got a pulse, it's weak but it's still there. Her injuries are too extensive to use regular healing methods, so there's only one choice. Ba-chan. Give me all the chakra I can handle now. Knowing what Naruto had planned, Kyuubi says, "You haven't mastered it yet, Kit. If you don't regulate the chakra just right, you'll not only fry her chakra coils, but you'll fry yours as well. I know that, but it's the only option we have at this point in time. Kasen wouldn't make it in time and she's fading fast, so please Ba-chan, just give me the chakra." Naruto didn't need a verbal response from Kyuubi because he could already feel her chakra starting to flow through him. So Naruto closed his eyes and concentrated all of Kyuubi's chakra in his hands to glowing red orbs encompassed his palms, then 3 claw-like blades extended from the tips of the orbs. When he felt it was ready, Naruto opened his eyes and plunged the claws into Haku's wound while saying, "Chiu Sum, healing claw." You could see the strain on Naruto's face as he struggled to regulate the flow of chakra into Haku's body as well as shape the chakra so it would heal her wounds. By the time Tsunade made it to Naruto, she was amazed to see that her wounds were almost completely healed. As the wound finally finished healing, Naruto cancelled the jutsu, and collapsed on the ground gasping for air. Seeing his opportunity to strike, Gato decides to pull out his trump card. "Shadow. Come out of hiding, and finish these troublemakers off." "Well, I guess it's show time." Standing up straight, Shadow disappears into the shadows. Reappearing next to Gato, Shadow says, "I don't think so, it's time I finish this mission." Gato turns around surprised by Shadow's comment, but before he can say anything, Shadow has already used a dagger to slice off his head. As the body falls to the ground, Shadow uses his speed to decapitate the rest of Gato's army before they can even react. Picking up Gato's head, Shadow seals it into a scroll and puts it in his cloak. Turning toward Naruto's group, Shadow does a simple bow and says, "Please accept this as an apology for all the trouble my teammates have caused you, and I'm looking forward to our next encounter, Naruto-sama, until we meet again," and then disappears into the shadows. After regaining his breath and recovering from the shock of what just happened, Naruto went over to check on Haku. With Tsunade's help, he learned that the jutsu was a complete success. The wound has been completely healed, and to Tsunade's amazement, there won't even be a scar. it's like she was never even pierced with the spear. Now that Naruto knew that Haku was out of danger, Naruto went straight up to Sasuke, grabbed him by the collar of his shirt, and slammed high against one of the supporting pillars. "You bastard! You were aiming that spear at me, weren't you?" screamed Naruto. Sasuke just looks on impassively and says, "I don't know what you're talking about." That's right, Sasuke-kun would never aim it at a comrade. He was probably trying to get one of those mercenaries, and you simple got in his way. "Yeah, that's right, Cha," says Sakura. "PP, please don't fight L like this." I'm sure Sasuke-san didn't mean to throw it at you, Naruto-san," said Hinata as she tried to play peacemaker. Kakashi put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and said, "Put Sasuke down, Naruto. I didn't see what happened, but how do you know it was him? It could have been thrown by one of the mercenaries." That's when Tsunade decided to add her 2 cents in. "You've got to be kidding me, Kakashi. The spear was thrown from behind him. None of those men ever made it past our line of defense." Kakashi turned to face Tsunade and said, "Did you see Sasuke aim the spear at Naruto, Tsunade-sama?" "Well, no, but from what I saw after Naru-chan yelled, I would say that it's the only possible conclusion." Kakashi just shook his head and added, "But, that's your opinion, Tsunade-sama, and according to Konoha law, you need some kind of physical evidence, before charging a shinobi with any kind of crime. You know what the penalty is, if this law is broken." Tsunade just glared at Kakashi and said, "Are you threatening me, Kakashi?" Naruto was listening to the conversation between Kakashi and Tsunade, and after hearing what Kakashi said, Naruto decided not to cause any unnecessary trouble for his cousin. "Fine, I'll let him go, but I'm warning you now, Sasuke-tem, if you hurt anyone that I care about again, the village won't be able to save you from my wrath." And with that, Naruto slammed Sasuke hard enough against the pillar to cause Sasuke to cough up some blood and then throw him to the ground. Tsunade just looked at Naruto before saying, "Are you sure, Naru-chan? I mean, he did try to kill you, and he almost killed your friend over there." Letting out a sigh, Naruto said, "I really don't have a choice. With Sasuke-tem hiding behind the protection of Konoha, I really can't do anything to him. I mean, even with Zabuza's and Haku-chan's help, we're not strong enough to take on Konoha. So for now, I'll have to abide by their rules." Tsunade reluctantly nodded her head and says, "Fine." Seeing that the situation has calmed down somewhat, Tazuna decides to speak. "I think with all that's happened today, we should head back home, and take the rest of the day off. We'll start work on the bridge tomorrow." Turning to Zabuza, he adds, "Since you helped defend the bridge in my life, you're then welcome to stay with us." Seeing no other option, Zabuza agrees, and after helping with the cleanup, they all head back to Tazuna's house. While Naruto carries Haku, he can't help but feel a sense of happiness wash over him as his pace slowed down. He couldn't help but think, "Well, Haku-chan, I was able to keep my promise after all." Once you're fully rested, we'll have to ask Zabuza about traveling together for a while. Who knows, maybe he'll even agree to become part of the group, and then that way we won't have to worry about saying goodbye to each other. Naruto couldn't help but have a smile on his face as he picked up his pace to rejoin the others.